There's a wedding dress lying in a ditch off Route 19. Mud-streaked, torn at the hem, and covered in feathers. I know because I drove past it 3 times before I realized it was hers. The 4th time, I pulled over. I stared at it for a full minute before stepping out of my car. There were 3 chickens walking around it, just wandering. I don't know where the chickens came from. There's no farm for miles. One of them pecked at the lace like it was food. A stray dog was sniffing the bodice. I didn't touch the dress. I just stood there like an idiot, rain soaking through my hoodie, looking down at the one thing we had argued about the most. She said it made her feel like a swan. I said it cost more than my car. She won, obviously. And now it was here, in the mud, with poultry. That was 5 days after she ghosted me in New Mexico. No warning. No fight. No, we need to talk. Just a note on the hotel nightstand, folded like a takeout menu. Don't follow me. I'm sorry. L. The room still smelled like her shampoo. Her toothbrush was gone, but her engagement ring? She left it next to the note like a punctuation mark. I waited 36 hours before I told anyone. 36 hours of trying to convince myself that maybe she just needed space, or that her phone died, or that she was kidnapped by desert aliens. Honestly, that last one started to feel most plausible. But when I saw the dress in that ditch, I knew. Not just that she was gone, but that she'd meant to disappear. It wasn't just cold feet. It wasn't a bad trip. It was something else. Something planned. And the worst part? Everyone thinks I did something to her. The first time the sheriff called, I thought it was about my truck. It had been parked half on, half off the shoulder where I'd stopped by that ditch with the dress and the damn chickens. But no, he didn't care about the truck. He asked if I had time to drop by the station. His tone was polite, but had that quiet firmness, like when a dentist says, you might feel some pressure. I said sure. What else was I going to do? Sit home and stare at her half-packed suitcase? I drove straight there, heart pounding, hands shaking on the wheel. The woman I loved had vanished. I figured they needed me to help find her. Maybe she'd gotten lost. Maybe someone had taken her. I was ready to do whatever they needed. But that's not what they needed. They sat me down in this narrow room that smelled like printer toner and sour coffee. No one said the word interrogation, but it didn't take a genius. One guy asked me if I'd been drinking. Another asked how often we argued. One of them, a guy with a thick mustache and coffee-stained teeth, tilted his head and said, would you describe her as emotional? I froze. Not because I had something to hide, but because suddenly I realized I wasn't there to help. I was being evaluated. Me. The guy who cried in front of a candle display at Bed Bath & Beyond because it smelled like her apartment when we first met. I told them the truth. That she'd left a note. That she'd left her ring. That I had no idea where she'd gone. I even offered to hand over my phone, show them texts, pictures, the last message she'd sent me. She said don't follow her, I repeated, like maybe saying it again would make it sound less insane. They didn't arrest me. They didn't even accuse me. But when I left that building, I wasn't the grieving fiancé anymore. I was the last man seen with her. The guy who maybe, possibly, had a reason to be angry. And just like that, the people around me began to shift. Her brother, Nolan, blocked me. Her boss stopped returning my calls. And her best friend, Jules? The one she'd supposedly gone to New Mexico to meet? She vanished too. Her number was disconnected. Her apartment was suddenly empty. Her Instagram wiped. That's when the sick feeling really set in. This wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't an impulsive getaway. This was something orchestrated. And I was the fool left behind in the mess. I went back to the ditch again. Don't ask me why. Maybe I thought there'd be something else, some clue I'd missed. But the dress was gone. So were the chickens. Just flattened grass and tire tracks in the dirt. I stood there with my hands in my jacket pockets, wind pushing against me like it was trying to shove me back into reality. And then my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Emery, she's not who you think she is. Check your mailbox before sunset. That's all it said. I didn't breathe for a full minute. I just stood there, reading it over and over. And then I ran, like an idiot, ran to my car, sped home, nearly knocked over a kid on a bike at the corner. I skidded into my driveway, slammed the car door, and ran to the mailbox. There was a package inside. No return label. No writing. Just a plain padded envelope sealed with clear tape. And what was inside changed everything. I stood in my kitchen holding that padded envelope like it was a live grenade. It was warm from the sun, but there was something off, a faint scent coming from it. Sweet, floral, but wrong. It took me a second to place it. Lila's perfume. The same one I used to love. She always overdid it. She'd walk past me and I'd be choking on jasmine for an hour. But mixed in with it now, coming off the envelope, was something sharp and sour. I don't know why I didn't just throw the whole thing in the freezer and walk away. Any sane person would have called the cops. But I wasn't sane. Not anymore. I was a guy whose almost wife had vanished, whose name was being whispered with suspicion, and whose mailbox now held God knows what. So, of course, I opened it. Inside were 3 things. The first was a flash drive. The second, a black hair tie with a single blonde hair loop through it. Not Lila's. She had dark auburn hair. This one was pale, almost white. And the third thing? A torn piece of a wedding photo. Not ours, someone else's. A man's hand holding a bouquet, his wedding band visible. The picture had been ripped so only the hand and part of a white dress remained. I flipped it over. No writing. Nothing. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, fingers trembling so hard I could barely hit the keys. There was only one video on it. No title. Just a single file. I clicked it. The screen went black for a second, then shaky footage appeared, filmed on a phone, I think. It was inside a moving car. A woman's voice was laughing, loud, unhinged almost. Then the camera shifted, and I saw Lila. But it wasn't my Lila. Not the soft-spoken, anxious woman who lit candles for her nerves and folded her sweaters with obsessive precision. This version of her was wide-eyed and grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Her hair was messier than I'd ever seen it. She looked high, or drunk, or something else entirely. She turned to the camera and said, "This is it. We're actually doing it." Then she laughed again and added, "He'll never find us. He's probably still crying into the registry." The video cut off. My stomach dropped so hard I nearly threw up. My hands went ice cold. I replayed it 5 times, trying to convince myself it was some weird deepfake. But no, it was real. That was her. And she wasn't kidnapped. She wasn't lost. She wasn't broken. She left me. With someone else. Willingly. That was the first time I felt real anger. Not sadness. Not confusion. Pure, white-hot embarrassment wrapped in betrayal. I had mourned her like a widow. I had canceled a wedding with tears in my voice. I had defended her. And she was out there somewhere, cackling in a car with a stranger while I sat here in my fleece pajamas eating cereal for dinner and Googling how long to wait before filing a missing person claim. I wanted answers. I wanted names. But most of all, I wanted to know why. What did I miss? What part of our life was fake? How long had she been planning this? Was Jules even real? Or was that just a cover for something bigger? The next morning, there was another envelope. No note this time. Just a hotel keycard. And a napkin. Folded. With one word written in lipstick. Tonight. I stared at the napkin for hours. I unfolded it, refolded it, tried to smell the lipstick like an idiot, as if that would confirm something, but all I got was a faint synthetic rose scent and the uncomfortable feeling that someone was playing a game I didn't understand. The keycard looked like any other, a generic white plastic card with a tiny red hotel logo in the corner. I Googled it. It was a roadside and about 40 minutes away. The kind of place truckers stop for the night or high school couples sneak into for privacy. Nothing fancy. Nothing comforting. I told myself not to go. Over and over. But curiosity always wins when you've got nothing left to lose. So around 6:15, I shaved, changed into a clean shirt that still smelled like her lavender detergent, and drove out toward the highway. The sun was already dipping when I pulled into the parking lot. The front desk clerk was scrolling through her phone. I gave her the card and tried to act casual, but when she scanned it, she paused. "Oh," she said. "This one was prepaid this morning. Under Emery Keene, right?" My blood turned cold. I hadn't booked anything. She handed the card back and gave me a smile that I'm sure was meant to be polite, but it felt like a smirk. Room 304. Top of the stairs. Enjoy your stay. The hallway smelled like old air freshener and cigarette smoke. Room 304 was at the far end. I stood in front of it for a long time, keycard in hand, pulse pounding. What was I expecting? Her? Someone else? A confession? A setup? I had no idea. But I slid the card through the lock and pushed the door open. The lights were already on. Inside was a perfectly ordinary hotel room, queen bed, dresser, mini fridge humming quietly in the corner. But what hit me wasn't the layout. It was the atmosphere. Like someone had been there recently. A lamp was still warm. The bathroom door was half open. And on the bed sat an envelope. My name, again, handwritten in black marker. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, grainy, clearly taken without the subject knowing. It showed Lila, sitting at an outdoor cafe somewhere warm, sunglasses on, laughing. But what chilled me wasn't her. It was the man across from her. His face was partially turned, but I recognized the back of that head. The tattoos on the forearm. It was her ex-Camden. The one she swore had moved to Portugal. The one she called a mistake I'll never repeat. And now she was with him. But why the photo? Who took it? And why were they sending it to me? I turned the envelope upside down again. A folded piece of notebook paper fell out. A message written in shaky handwriting. He thinks she's using him too. You're not the only one. I sat down on the bed, head spinning, stomach tight. Someone was watching them. Someone was tracking them. And now they were pulling me into it. But the scariest part? It wasn't that she left. It was that she didn't just want to disappear. She wanted to vanish so cleanly that even her new lover didn't fully trust her. And someone, for some reason, was making sure I saw it. As I sat there trying to piece it all together, my phone buzzed. It was a new number again, just like the last text. I didn't want to look at it, but I did. Emery, leave the room. Now. No punctuation. No explanation. Just that one cold command. And then I heard the sound. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. Getting closer. For a moment, I couldn't move. My body just locked up. That text, leave the room. Now, felt less like a warning and more like a countdown I hadn't realized had already started. The footsteps on the other side of the door got closer, not hurried, but patient, like the person walking already knew what they were going to do. I stuffed the photo and the note back into the envelope, shoved it into my jacket pocket, and crossed the room in 3 shaky strides. The window was sealed shut. Figures. It was one of those budget hotels where ventilation meant don't ask questions. I hesitated near the bathroom, but there was no escape there either. So I did what I thought was smart. I turned off the lights and crouched beside the bed. Then the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not loud, not threatening, just calm, followed by silence. No shuffling, no voice, just the door and whatever waited behind it. And then, suddenly, a man spoke, clear as a bell, like he was reading a script. Emery, we just want to talk. You left your car unlocked again. You know Rook likes to ride in the front seat. I felt my blood freeze. Rook was my dog. My beagle. He died 2 years ago. The only person I ever told that story to, down to the detail about how he used to jump in the passenger seat every time I opened the door, was Lila. And I told her that during a snowstorm, while we were stuck on the interstate for 4 hours. It wasn't something I posted online. It wasn't in any email. There was no way some stranger could have known. Unless she told them. Or unless they'd been watching us for longer than I realized. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. I waited. After a minute, I heard the footsteps again, walking away this time. Whoever it was didn't try to open the door. Didn't jiggle the handle. Just left. Like they were never there at all. I stayed crouched for another 5 minutes before I finally worked up the nerve to peek through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I gathered my things, what little I had, and slipped out. I didn't take the stairs. I didn't even trust the elevator. I climbed out a side service door near the laundry room and jogged to my car, heart thudding like a drum. I checked the back seat before getting in. Then I drove. But not home. No, I didn't know where home was anymore. That place, with the photos and our mattress and her coffee mug still sitting by the sink, felt like a trap now. So I drove to the only place I could think of, an old gas station I used to stop at during late shifts years ago. One of those 24/7 places where no one asks questions, and the clerk only makes eye contact if you're stealing something. I parked behind it, killed the headlights, and just sat there, trying to collect my thoughts. That's when I pulled the envelope out again and really examined it. There was something stiff behind the Polaroid, something I hadn't noticed before. A second flash drive. Smaller. Taped to the inside. I hesitated, but I had already gone too far not to look. This one didn't contain a video. It had documents. Scans of emails. PDFs of flight confirmations. A partial bank statement. None of them were mine. All of them were Lila's. Or someone pretending to be her. And buried in the middle was a confirmation for a wire transfer. $15,000. Sent under a different name to a private account in Nevada. The sender? Jules. But Jules wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Her apartment was empty. Her phone was dead. Her account's inactive. So where was she? And what was this money for? As I scrolled through the files, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a voicemail. No caller ID. Just the message. I pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then the same voice from the hallway, gentle, calm, horrifying. If you want her to stay gone, Emery, stop digging. If you want the truth, meet me at mile marker 112. Bring the envelope. Come alone. This is the last time we speak. The voicemail ended with a sound I couldn't explain. Not static. Not interference. It sounded like breathing. Slow. Steady. Right next to the microphone. And just before it cut off, a whisper. You should have never proposed. The thing about getting a message like that, meet me at mile marker 112, is you start questioning everything you've ever known about the roads you've driven 1,000 times. I scrolled through GPS apps, typed the coordinates into 3 different navigation systems, and not one of them listed a mile marker 112 on Route 89. The road stopped at 109, then skipped to 114. I even called a local ranger station and pretended to be writing a travel blog. The guy on the phone laughed and said there were no such markers in that stretch. Some of them were removed years ago, he said, after a landslide messed up the numbering. But I knew what I'd heard. And deep down, I think I already understood that this wasn't about a number on a pole. It was about a place only certain people could see when they were told to. So around midnight, I packed the envelope, some bottled water, a flashlight, and a wrench I grabbed out of pure desperation. I don't own a gun. I don't even own pepper spray. But that wrench felt heavy in my hand, and it gave me the illusion of control. I drove out onto Route 89, scanning the sides of the road like my life depended on it. And somewhere past marker 110, I saw it. It wasn't a real sign. Not metal. Not government-issued. It was a piece of plywood propped against a tree, spray-painted in red, 112. I slowed down, headlights catching the edge of a narrow, barely visible dirt path veering off the shoulder into the woods. It looked like it hadn't been driven on in years. I should have turned back. I should have driven straight to a police station, handed them the envelope, and said, "Here, deal with this mess." But I didn't. Because I still had that voice in my head, the whisper that said I should have never proposed. And that voice wasn't threatening me. It was warning me. So I followed the path. It led for about half a mile through thick trees until it opened into a clearing that felt wrong. Too quiet. Like sound had been turned off. There were no crickets. No rustling. Just the dull thrum of my own heartbeat and the crunch of gravel under my tires. In the center was a small structure. It wasn't a cabin. It wasn't a shack. It looked like an old guard post from a different era, barely held together by rusted nails and black mold. A single lantern flickered inside. I killed the engine and stepped out. Immediately, the cold hit me like a slap. But it wasn't weather. It was something else. The kind of cold that comes from knowing you're being watched. I stepped closer. Inside the structure, sitting on a cracked wooden chair, was a man I'd never seen before, but he spoke like we'd known each other forever. "You took longer than I thought," he said, his voice dry, accentless. He was maybe 50, maybe 60. Pale. Paper thin. He looked like he'd been sitting there for days. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We don't have much time." "I don't even know who you are," I said. "No," he agreed. "But I know who you are. And I know why she chose you." That cut deeper than I expected. I sat down. He looked me over, then said something that knocked the breath out of me. "She didn't run away because she stopped loving you. She ran because she got too close to telling you what this really was." I didn't answer. My hands were sweating through my sleeves. "She was part of something. Years before you met her," he continued. "She did things. Got paid for silence. But with you, she started to break protocol." "What protocol?" I asked, barely whispering. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached behind his chair and pulled out another envelope, this one thicker, heavier, and handed it to me. "She told me to give you this if you ever made it here. Said you'd need to see it for yourself." I opened it slowly. Inside were more photos. Lila in different countries. Different years. Different names. Each one time-stamped. In one, she was pregnant, something she never told me. In another, she was holding hands with a man who looked like a politician I recognized from a scandal years ago. And then there was a birth certificate. A fake one. With her name listed as Laura Ainsley. Born in Ohio. Not Oregon, like she always said. There were passports. IDs. Dozens of them. None of them matched. She had never been Lila at all. "I don't understand," I said, my voice cracking. "Why would she do this to me? What did I do?" The man stood up. "You gave her something she wasn't allowed to have. A normal life. Love. He stepped toward the shadows. And now someone wants her back. Back where? I asked, louder now. But he was already gone. I looked down at the last photo. A recent one. Dated just 4 days ago. Lila was standing outside a small private airfield. Behind her, on the tail of a jet, was a symbol I didn't recognize until I flipped over the photo. Written in red ink were 3 words. Don't follow this. I don't remember driving back to town. I know I passed things on the way, trees, road signs, maybe even cars, but none of it stuck. My mind was stuck in a loop, bouncing between the photos, the voice of that man in the woods, and the gut-twisting realization that the woman I thought I was going to marry may never have actually existed. Or worse, she existed, but only in pieces, borrowed from other lives, stitched together into something believable enough to fool a guy like me. And yet, somehow, I still wanted answers more than I wanted to hate her. And that scared me the most. I couldn't go home. I didn't want to sit in that apartment surrounded by ghosts. So I drove to the only place where no one would ask questions, the back lot of my workshop. I pulled the files out again under the flickering motion light. Every piece of documentation, every alias, every date, they all added up to something, but I couldn't see the full picture. Who was she working for? What kind of life requires that many names? And what did it mean when the person she almost became, the one who picked out wedding plates and cried over dog videos with me, was the lie she almost believed in too? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the cab of my truck replaying our last few weeks together before she vanished. Every odd pause, every strange call she said was work, every nightmare she woke from in a cold sweat and refused to explain. I had chalked it up to stress. Wedding anxiety. Everyone gets that, right? But what if it had been something darker? What if she'd been trying to break away from something she couldn't fully outrun? And somehow, I'd gotten caught in the middle? At 4:42 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Same unlisted number. But this time, it wasn't a text or a voicemail. It was a live call. I stared at the screen like it might bite me. I shouldn't have answered. I know that. But I did. Emery, the voice whispered, and it was her. I knew it instantly. Soft, panicked, not like the laughing Lila from the car video. This was different. This was her the way she used to be in the middle of the night, curled into my chest after a bad dream. Lila. I whispered back, but I wasn't even sure what to say next. What do you say to someone who erased herself? I don't have long. They're tracing this. Listen to me carefully. Don't follow the jet. That was meant for someone else to find. It's bait. Everything they left for you. They want you to keep digging. I swallowed hard. I don't understand any of this. Why would you leave that trail for me? I didn't, she said quickly. I left the note at the hotel. Everything else after that. Emery, they're trying to use you to find someone I helped disappear years ago. I broke the rules. I broke away. And you're the only loose thread they can pull. My voice cracked. So what was I to you? A safe house? A placeholder. You were real, she whispered. That's why I left. That's why I didn't want you involved. Her voice broke, just for a second. That tiny fracture was all I needed to feel the ground shift again under me. Somewhere in that voice was the woman I remembered. Not the fake names or the staged smiles, the real her. Where are you? I asked. Silence. Then she said something that froze the blood in my veins. You need to get rid of everything. The envelope, the photos, the drive. All of it. Burn it. If you don't, they'll use it to tear your life apart piece by piece. But I need the truth, Lila. I need to know who you were. You already do, she said. I was the woman who wanted to be someone else. And I almost made it. The call ended. No goodbye. Just the silence of a connection severed too cleanly. I sat there in my truck as the sun began to rise, casting pale orange light through the windshield. In my lap were the last pieces of her life I might ever see, and I was supposed to destroy them? But I couldn't bring myself to move. Because even after everything, I still didn't know if I wanted justice or a second chance. And I had a feeling that choice was about to be taken from me. The fire was small at first. Just a few licks of flame in a rusted metal barrel behind my workshop. The sun was fully up by then, and the town had started to stir. Delivery trucks rumbled past the lot, birds returned to their nonsense, and someone nearby was blasting morning radio from an open garage. Everything felt oddly normal, like I wasn't standing there feeding pages of classified documents and broken truths into a growing column of smoke. I burned everything. The flash drives. The photos. The envelope with my name scrawled on it in marker. Even the picture of her at the airfield. Every last scrap of that double life gone. I watched the flames eat away at it all, curling edges, blackening ink, turning what had been months of confusion and obsession into ash. I thought I'd feel empty, or stupid, or like I'd wasted the most important part of my life on something fake. But I didn't. I felt lighter. It hit me slowly. I hadn't slept in days. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't even looked in a mirror. But somehow, as the smoke faded and the final bits of paper turned to dust, I realized I wasn't lost anymore. I was finally standing still. And sometimes, standing still is the most radical thing you can do when the world's been spinning out of control. Later that day, I went back home. I braced myself for the ghosts, the couch where she used to curl up with a blanket, the closet half full of her old scarves, the dried bouquet I never threw away from our engagement-versary. But when I walked through the door, it felt different. It didn't feel haunted. It felt like a room waiting to be lived in again. My way. On my terms. I made coffee. Not the kind she liked, no almond milk, no cinnamon on top. Just plain, black coffee. I opened the windows. I turned on music I hadn't listened to in months. I sat on the couch and let myself breathe. The next few weeks were quieter. I went back to work. Slowly. I told people the wedding was officially off, and when they asked why, I just smiled and said, turns out we wanted different things. No one pried. Small towns are funny that way, they love gossip, but they respect a man who doesn't spill it. And for once, I was okay with not telling the whole story. Because the truth was, the more I let go of her, the more I started remembering myself. I started fixing up the workshop again. Got a couple new clients. I even signed up for this stupid woodworking competition in Ohio that I'd always been too scared to try before. I knew I wasn't the best craftsman, not by a long shot, but it gave me something to aim for that didn't involve decoding fake passports or wondering if I was being followed. And then, one afternoon, about 2 months after the last call, I got a postcard. No return address. Just a photo of a forest trail somewhere I didn't recognize, pine trees, morning fog, quiet. The handwriting on the back was unmistakably hers. Small, sharp, but this time softer. Don't look for me. That was the last time. You were never a cover, Emery. You were a mirror. Thank you for showing me who I wanted to be, even if I couldn't stay there. Keep building things. You're better at it than you think. There was no signature. Just a small ink drawing in the corner, a heart, surrounded by wildflowers. I stared at it for a long time, then pinned it to the wall above my workbench. That was the last I ever heard from her. And you know what? That was enough. Because sometimes closure isn't about getting all the answers. Sometimes it's about deciding that you deserve peace, even if the story doesn't have a perfect ending. And as for me, I'm okay. Not amazing. Not reborn. Just okay. And after everything, that's a victory.